You might have heard of that phrase, information is power. It's easy to trick somebody who's naive about something that you're knowledgeable of. So most of you'll know that I taught economics for 35 years. And economics is a subject that's barely studied. Well, it's not studied at all in England before the age of 16. And only a handful of people take it at A level. It's very much a minority subject. So that gives the government an awful lot of power to deceive people on things that relate to economics, which is pretty important because economics has a big impact on people's living standards. You know, if you can deceive somebody on economics, you can make a lot of money out of them without them even knowing that they've been a victim of some sort of theft, which is exactly what's been going on for the last 2 or 3 years with regards to inflation. So the other day, Jeremy Hunt announced that he's going to, he announced an intention that he's going to halve the UK's rate of inflation. Now, I think that many people are going to misunderstand what Hunt is saying here because they don't understand what inflation is and how it's measured. So what I'm going to do is just quickly go through that and explain this scam, this stunt that Jeremy Hunt is going to try and pull on the British public. So what is inflation? Put simply, inflation is a fall in the purchasing power of money. So what that means is that when you have inflation, people need more cash every single year to buy the same quantity and quality of goods. So inflation isn't just one price of one good or service going up. It's the price of everything going up because money is losing its purchasing power. So, maybe 2 years ago, I might have needed €1,000 a month for petrol, diesel, food, electricity, etc. Now, due to inflation, the prices have been rising. So these days, I might need €1,200 to purchase the same quantities of goods and services of the same quality, One thing that governments do when they measure inflation is that they take into account trading down. So they'll say, well, if somebody can't afford to buy fillet steak anymore because the price has gone up, they'll substitute a cheaper product like a hamburger into the basket of goods that they use to calculate inflation. So the figures are fiddled. So look, anyway, what I'm saying here is that they're fiddled in a way that makes inflation lower than what it really is. So if I look at what's happened to my requirements for cash, I needed €1,000. Now I need €1,200, an extra €200 over what I needed before to buy the same quantity of stuff, the same quality of stuff. So what that amounts to for me is a 20% fall in the value of my money. And that's inflation. That's what inflation really is. It's a fall in the purchasing power of money. Last year I did a video on what causes inflation, and I'll put up a thumbnail type thing in there at the end of the video, so you can actually find this other video that I did. So I'm not going to kind of repeat about what causes inflation, but essentially inflation's caused when central banks create too much money. So too much money is chasing too few goods, and that drives prices up across the board, which is what inflation is. So let's talk about the deception that Jeremy Hunt is trying to pull off. So he's claiming that he's going to halve the rate of inflation. Now, I think a lot of people out there will think that Jeremy Hunt is going to halve the price level. That's not what halving the rate of inflation means. Now, what you've got to get your head around here is that according to people like Jeremy Hunt, the way that they measure inflation is that it's the annual percentage increase in the average price level across the whole economy. So going back to the paper here. So halving the rate of inflation next year will be looking at prices on average rising by 10% rather than 20% that they did the year prior to that. So what a lot of people think, as I say, is that prices will actually fall. You know, halving inflation means like halving the cost of living crisis. It means prices going down. It doesn't mean that at all. All it means, as I say, is that the rate of price increases will slow. So rather than prices going up at a rate of 20% a year, they'll only go up at a rate of 10% a year. So 10% of 1200 is 120. So we'll have 120 euros worth of price increases this year if Hunt is able to reduce the rate of inflation. So the price level at the end of the year is going to be 1320. So basically, halving inflation is not going to cause the cost of living crisis to go away. It's just going to reduce the rate at which families are getting poorer. Yeah, so prices will still be going up if Hunt manages to halve the rate of inflation. But what these characters will do is that they'll say, well, inflation's falling, so we can cut interest rates and we can print more money. And what this will do is stoke another round of rising prices, a much faster accelerating rate of inflation. And that's what's basically going on. So just watch out for this, is that even if Hunt is able to reduce the rate of inflation, that doesn't mean that you're going to become better off. As we all know, wage increases have been lagging a long way behind inflation. You know, my wife was talking about wage rises in Finland, and a lot of people are getting somewhere between 3 and 4% wage increases. So that's nowhere near the rate of inflation that's been experienced. You know, so you might have more cash in your pocket because you've had a pay rise, but it's not enough to compensate for the rise in the cost of living. So people will have a lower material standard of living because more cash won't be able to buy them as much as what they were getting before this inflation was created by the money printing to finance furlough and other crazy government schemes that were financed, as I say, by the money printing. The economic mainstream as well, they love to talk about how inflation is a good thing for the economy. Inflation shows that there's plenty of economic activity, and they believe in this thing called the Phillips curve, that when inflation's high, unemployment will automatically be low because there's lots of spending in the economy. But what we're seeing now is the exact opposite of this. We're seeing reality, which is contradicting this Keynesian economics mumbo jumbo. Because people have got reduced purchasing power because their wages haven't been growing as fast as inflation, they're obviously buying quantity-wise fewer goods and services. So firms don't need to produce as much, so they're laying off staff. So rather than inflation being correlated with low unemployment, what we're seeing is the truth, which is the historical truth, which is inflation tends to go hand in hand with higher unemployment, not lower unemployment. So that's one thing to watch out for. The other thing as well is that the economic mainstream, they argue against what really helps working people, which is this thing called deflation. So deflation is when you have an increase in the purchasing power of money. So each €10 note or each £10 note is able to buy more goods and services than it did before during a deflation. So deflation is fantastic for working people, particularly people who are not powerful. You know, they don't have strong trade unions or organisations like, say, the BMA, trade associations that represent them. These people in a deflation get a pay rise, and they get a pay rise via price cuts. So the same money wage now buys more goods and services than it did before. But the establishment hates that. They absolutely hate deflation because it helps working people. So, but that's basically what should be happening, is that Jeremy Hunt, rather than trying to reduce the rate of inflation, he should be trying to reduce price levels back to what they were before the Conservative government started, and the Bank of England started the DIVC and the money printing cover story. So in essence, what I'm trying to say here is that people need falling prices, not falling inflation. You know, we don't need a reduction in the rate of increase of prices. We actually need outright price cuts. You know, for example, here in Finland, when I first came in November 2020, there's a big kilo block of like Edam cheese, which I quite like. Call me a pleb, I don't care. But it used to cost €5. Today it costs nearly €7. So that's basically a 40% increase in the price of that block of cheese. You know, if they just reduce the rate of inflation, it just means that that cheese will carry on going up in price. You know, maybe this year it only goes up to, I don't know, €7.20. That's not going to help working people. It's actually going to make them poorer. Reducing the rate of inflation isn't going to help them. What needs to happen is outright deflation. That price of that block of cheese needs to go back down to what it was before, €5. At the local pub, when I arrived, a pint of beer costs €5. Now it costs €5.50. So that's gone up by 10%. That price needs to come back down again. That's what working people need. They need falling prices. They need deflation rather than what economists call disinflation, which is a fall in the rate of inflation.
So when you think about it, Jeremy Hunt's promise to halve the rate of inflation, it's really a promise to increase your cost of living this year. It's a promise to make you even poorer. What a sneaky Hunt. Anyway, God bless.